In this video, I'm going to explain to you how I use 100 concepts for cultivating creativity, this card deck that I've created. And the cards or the concepts really are prompts for musical creation. And I have found them incredibly useful for improvisation, both in practice and performance, predominantly in practice, also in composition, and also in my teaching. The cards are organised predominantly into musical elements: melody, rhythm, harmony, structure and form, texture and timbre. But then there are some that are mixed between multiple elements, and then some that really fall in another category altogether. They're not connected to musical elements. The cards can be used by any instrument or voice, and also any level or ability, musical ability. It might be that some of the cards, some of the concepts are more idiosyncratic of piano playing. In those instances, I really encourage non-piano players or other instruments and voice to find ways to adapt the concepts to suit their particular circumstances. And the same applies for different levels of abilities. If some of the concepts are difficult to grasp, if there's a way to adapt them and interpret them in a very individual way, then I really highly encourage you to do so. It could also be that some of the concepts just feel inappropriate for your instrument or voice or your level of or ability, and in those instances you can just skip past them and maybe save them for a later date. It is also the case that some of the concepts lend themselves better towards composition rather than improvisation. They might be highly complex in an improvised context. So again, you can really make your own choices in that regard. And understanding that your interpretation of the cards is entirely up to you. The way I interpret them or anyone else might be different to you, and that's part of the beauty of it. Some of the concepts can be taken very literally, and in other instances you might want to be a lot more liberal or abstract in the way that you choose to interpret the concepts, and that is entirely up to you. So the idea is that you draw a card. I have drawn rondo. Rondo is a form, and rondo is something that I might prefer to use in composition rather than in improvisation, although I could certainly do it in improvisation. But you choose a card and it becomes your focus for the entire piece, whether that's improvised or composed. For example, here is malleable pulse, quickening and slowing. So you remain committed to that idea and you really see where you can take it. And I think one of the beauties of these cards is that, like any restriction, it gives you a focus and a purpose. And it allows you to really dive much deeper into some of the nuances of concepts that often we might just brush over. So it actually deepens your understanding of musical elements and how to construct musical pieces, whether that's in a spontaneous setting like improvisation, or something a lot more predetermined like composition. So you would draw a single card. You could also draw two cards. I would suggest that in improvisation you probably don't want to draw more than two cards, because then you start to have too many things on your agenda and it becomes difficult to actually just find flow, because you start overthinking everything, checking in whether you're doing all the things you should be doing. However, in composition you can certainly draw more cards, more concepts. You can use these in solo, duo or group settings of any instrumental or vocal combination. And it is sometimes a good idea to use a timer as well, particularly if you're working with new improvisers. they might really appreciate having a time limit as some kind of extra restriction that they're working to. And that can be really short, it could be 1 minute. So trying to get improvisation and creativity to actually feel like a really welcoming place and not an overwhelming space. And also I highly recommend that you record any improvisations that you're doing and that you use this journal to notate or create a log of what you've been doing. So the date of the improvisation, the time of day, the duration, the concept, a reflection after you've done the improvisation, any musical material that came out that you really liked, and then perhaps a post-reflection. If you've recorded it, you can listen a month or more later and see what you thought and how the two compare. Because often we think one thing straight after or during, and then when we have some separation, we actually think something entirely different, and that's quite an interesting lesson in itself.